Stanley made it home, parked his car in the driveway, and fumbled with his bags and keys as he walked up the 4 stairs to his house. He prepared to open the door, but before he could unlock the door, it opened, and his stunning wife was there to greet him. It felt so comfortable and pleasant. The embrace was very reminiscent of earlier times in their lives and marriage. "You're home." Emily greeted Stanley in a pleasant and loving manner. She gave him a hug and noticed the sugar babies from the logo on the bag and his temperature-pruned hands from holding the frozen desserts. "You brought those for us? How are you? It's been days since you've been home. I've been so worried about you. How have you processed losing Donald?" Initially, Emily was excited, but then felt a wave of sadness just after she mentions Donald's name. Stanley was emotionally and logically thrown off by his wife's initial burst of kindness. The loving embrace Emily gave him upon arrival was only one of a number of reasons why he fell in love with her so many years ago. They had an exciting chemistry. As one would expect, he was jolted by the emotional shift and felt awfully uncomfortable when her tone and mood changed, although he fully understood why. "Where have you been? I've needed you." "I've been sorting out my feelings." "As have I. I've been trying to sort through the events too. I've cried so much. Just when I think I can't shed another tear, there are hundreds more waiting to come out. I thought about seeing a grief counselor." One after another, tears rolled down Emily's face. Her son is dead. He's gone. He's dead. The cat was listening intently and then circled Emily's legs. Emily calmed down a bit, then intuitively reached down and pulled the cat to her chest. The cat meant the world to her. She did not feel empty when she held it. Emily motioned for Stanley to grab the cat. She handed the cat to Stanley, who initially and instinctively pushed it away. Emily continued to quietly insist through her persistent extension of the cat in Stanley's direction. Stanley was not a fan of pets, especially cats. Emily insisted though. She gently pushed the cat in Stan's hand. When the cat was finally in his hand, something made him hold it more affectionately in his arms. He pulled it closely to his chest. As it was for Emily, so was it also for Stanley. There was a comforting and familiar feeling holding the cat, and the cat purred. Emily grabbed him around his bicep and led him into the kitchen. They sat at the breakfast bar, and Emily got 2 spoons from a drawer for their sugar babies. She started on her Heavenly Delight sugar baby, and Stanley inhaled his creamy mocha sugar baby. The entire time Stanley savored his creamy mocha shake, he rubbed and pet the cat. Before they realized it, Stanley and Emily had eaten half of their sugar baby. Emily started to feel tired. The last few weeks had been so taxing. It felt great to let her guard down and be with her husband and to relax, to talk, and rest with him near. Emily walked toward the couch and motioned for Stanley to come sit next to her. Emily felt relaxed and leaned into Stanley's shoulder as he held the cat. The vibe felt so right. Emily nodded in and out of sleep into Stanley's arms. The cat's mane suddenly heightened. It extended its paws while in Stanley's firm, muscular arms, making it uncomfortable to be held. The cat moved out of Stanley's arms and laid on Emily's breast, then moved his face just above Emily's face. In an unimaginable manner, the cat opened its mouth as Emily lightly breathed out. Stanley was awed, intrigued, and unable to move his limbs. He was overcome by a paralyzing fear. A mist exited Emily's mouth and entered the cat's mouth. The cat jumped up off of Emily's breast and began to walk in a circle. It completed 3 revolutions, then stood in one place. His abdomen started to compress and extend violently, nearly 30 seconds, which was followed by a puking sound. The cat's neck leaned back in the direction of his spine and the ceiling, and a mist was released. Emily slowly woke up, with her head still laid on Stanley's shoulder. Emily looked into Stanley's eyes and asked him a very pointed question. "What did you try to do to me, Stanley?" Emily gradually raised her face off Stan's shoulder and began to sit upright. She never diverted her eyes from his. As she rose, she imagined the pain of Donald's final hours and the abandonment Donald must have felt when he realized that his father was not there. This rocked Emily. With her palm open, she repeatedly raised her right hand and lowered it onto Stanley's chest many times. It was not a punch, but many very startling smacks on his chest. His eyes grew wide. Your filthy lover killed our son. She single-handedly took his life. That wasn't enough. She seriously injured Mom and caused the premature birth of your daughter. Both of them are fighting for their lives right now. After several smacks, Emily left her hand on Stanley's chest. She could feel it, and Stanley was fully aware that his heart was beating very quickly. They could see his shirt move above the place where his heart resided in his chest. What do you mean, dear? Emily gently moved herself off of his chest and stood up. She commanded Stanley to stand, and he did, but he did not on his own volition. He felt as if his body was moving on its own. As he stood, Stanley moved in the direction of the family wall. It was the place where all of Donald's, Emily's, Stanley's accomplishments and family photos were displayed. Hands reached from inside the wall to grab Stanley and hold him in place. You have no remorse. Why did you try to cover up our son's death? Don't you love Donald? You know how I feel. I don't know. And your son didn't know because you weren't there as he took his final breath. As the tears flowed from Emily's eyes, the hands from the wall gripped Stanley tighter. They applied additional pressure and caused pain that radiated through various parts of his body. Rain clouds rapidly formed outside, and the rain began to come down heavily from the sky. The winds grew in intensity, and its howling could be heard, along with tree branches thrashing against the side of the house. I care. You have 2 sons, Stanley. I saw how much you love them. I saw how much they adore you. You were there? What did you do? I took from you as you took from me. There was an uncomfortable pause. Then Emily continued to speak. Her tone changed from anger and an audibly raised tone to a lower, relaxed, seemingly concerned tone. How is Ellen? She's dead. She died a horrible death. I knew. Stanley, I was fully aware. It was a rhetorical question, silly. I allowed that Gordo husband of hers to see her suffer and allowed you to watch her die. You weren't present for one death, but you most certainly were for another. She wrote you a note. Did she now? It's here in my pocket. Let me give it to you. Please, I'd love to see it. The hands from the wall released him, and Stanley approached Emily to give her the letter Ellen had written her. Stan reached past the letter for his gun and without hesitation aimed and fired. Emily uttered a single word, "Stop!" She brushed the bullet to the side and it fell to the floor. Stanley, you won't win so easily. I love that you tried, but you've hurt this family far too deeply. Emily paused to gather her thoughts. I have not decided if I'll cure your twins. I mean, it's only fair. Ellen killed my Donald. It's the least I can do to balance the scale. Imagine how much gratification I would get from watching a doting father of twins go through a second round of learning that his own flesh and blood children are dead. Maybe the second time he will actually be hurt and grieve the loss. Maybe this time you will be there for your children in their final hours. Emily watched carefully as Stan squirmed. She studied his reaction to see exactly what would hurt him in a way that would rival or surpass the great pain she felt she endured and continued to undergo as she hoped for her mother's and newborn survival and recovery. Stanley, true to one of his favorite card games, maintained an expressionless face. Oh, Stanley, what do you think about them learning that their favorite uncle, their father, dying an equally horrible death so soon after their mother? I'm sure the wound is still highly unpleasant for those kids. This may take them over the edge. Maybe they'll kill themselves and it'll be a win-win-win for me. Ellen's death, your death, the twins' death. Of course, I would not let them just die or watch you die. I make sure that they relive it in their dreams and experience stress daily by living under a cloud of constant fear that the same fate will befall them. Stanley squirmed in a way that only the keen eyes of a married woman of 14 years could recognize. She realized in that moment just what to say to rattle and anger her husband. Emily loved it. He hid it as best he could, but now Emily knew precisely what she needed to do. Stanley, my love, your death is fast approaching. The only sound in the room was the movement of air circulating from the heating and cooling system as it cycled on and off to maintain the selected temperature. Emily intentionally allowed an uncomfortable pause. This was a technique she used when she actively practiced law and was prosecuting a case. She wanted Stanley to internalize how angry she was in that moment and for him to think introspectively how this was even possible. Emily adored Stanley. She was completely in love with him. She admired him. She was attracted to him. In this moment, however, she wanted nothing more than for him to die. Events, actions, or inaction on Stanley's part negated those earlier feelings. I want this letter that you speak of. The cat jumped up with his claws extended and swatted Stanley's hand, causing him to yelp in pain and drop the gun. Give me this letter. I want to know what Ellen said. Stanley passed Emily the letter. Have you read it yet? No, I haven't. Emily opened the envelope and started to read Ellen's letter aloud. I feel my life slipping away. I feel hopeless and helpless. I also feel loved. In his final moments, I can imagine your son felt the same, even if he did not have the words or ability to express it. I love my twins dearly. I also love the man who helped me create them. My husband and I couldn't have children. We could not conceive. I conceived my twins from a romantic encounter and told my husband that in vitro fertilization worked. I lied to my husband, and he loved me immensely, enough to vacate my crime against your mother, son, and premature daughter when I caused the accident some days ago. How awful I was, and very much deserving to suffer and die in this manner. I hope knowing of my death lessens your pain. My children mean everything. I'm sure your little guy meant a great deal to you too. From a sincerely apologetic killer, Ellen. There was a brief pause. Ellen never knew you were married. She knew. What she did not know was with whom I was married to. You're an animal. You're a pompous ass. And you loved her? More than you, yes I did. What did our son mean to you? Emily, he was my son. What does that mean, Stanley? What did Donald mean to you? Stanley provided a revealing response. He was my son and I know that, but I had no connection to him. The cat kissed. Tell me how you felt seeing Ellen die. You're an animal, and you're a witch. I'm a woman who lost her son. I'm a woman who blindly loved a man who did not love me or our child. How could you do it? You will see Ellen soon, under equally painful terms. Perhaps your dear mother will learn what happens when power is carelessly used. You remember, right? My mother clings to life in an unresponsive coma as a result of Ellen slamming her vehicle into ours. Ellen's tone suddenly changed and she lovingly spoke to Stanley. Hold my hand, dear. I have something special to share with you.